Joining us now is Arise News Washington Bureau Chief Leila McDowell. Liz, thanks very much for joining us. So how much closer is he to getting his way?
Well, the trade battle is basically over. A big victory for big business and GOP leaders in Congress today when the Senate voted to pass the Fast Track Authority. The Republican leaders work closely with an administration they have more frequently opposed to nudge this trade bill over the goal line. Now, of course, the bill hasn't passed yet. On the losing side, labor unions, Akhtar, and liberal Democrats who had fought hard against the authority, they're likely now to turn their attention towards trying to stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But what Fast Track allows is for the White House to send that trade deal to Congress for an up or down vote. And this is a bill where the details are mostly secret. The Senate will not be able to filibuster them, and lawmakers will not have the power to amend them. So it's going to be a tough fight for liberal Democrats. Now, there's another bill that's due to be voted on any moment that was initially attached to Fast Track. That includes trade preferences for African nations and a workers' assistance program that is supposed to help workers that may be displaced by the trade bill. Then the House has to vote on that new package, but the bill is expected to pass. So big victory for Obama, Akhtar.
It's a little bit of a yo-yo by the sounds of things. Let's take a look at the relationship between the president and the party leaders. Still as acrimonious as ever?
Between the
president and the party leaders.
And the policy leaders?
The party leaders themselves.
Definitely. I mean, there's such a big divide between, Republicans and the president on many other issues, and now between Democrats and the president on the trade bills. So, yeah, that relationship continues to be a little rocky.
Let's take a look at another economic issue. That's the Export-Import Bank. And the agency has been around for some 80 years, lending overseas buyers credit to buy U.S. goods, etc. Republicans want it shut down. Why is there a problem?
Well, it's really interesting, Akhtar. To businesses' relief, this shutdown may only be temporary. It's an 81-year-old bank created during the Depression that makes and guarantees loans to help overseas buyers purchase U.S. products, from airplanes to baby clothes. But over the past year, it's become this test of GOP purity, and Tea Party-backed lawmakers and conservative groups have denounced the bank. They call it crony capitalism, and they vowed to get rid of it, and they've been pressuring Republicans to go along. But supporters like the Chamber of Commerce disagree. They say the agency helps smaller companies, and it's necessary to keep U.S. businesses competitive, particularly against key foreign competitors like China, which have generous export credit agencies helping their homegrown industries. So lawmakers of both parties on Capitol Hill do expect a reauthorization of the bank, and that could happen in the Senate in July after the recess. But for now, because it wasn't voted on before the recess, the opponents of the Export-Import Bank will get their wish, and it will go out of business.
Interesting. Let's move on to another point. Now, the head of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management was in the hot seat in the hearings today over the hacking into personal files alleged by China that obviously impacted millions of Americans. What's happening there?
Well, lots of finger pointing, which burst into the open on Capitol Hill today. It's the third hearing on what is the largest federal incident of hacking. Today, it was about blame for the cyber attack on these U.S. government's personnel records. The chairman of the House Oversight Committee said it could affect as many as 32 million current and former employees and others. Now, the head of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, Catherine Archuleta, acknowledged to lawmakers that she was responsible for keeping the files safe, but she blamed the hackers, which the FBI suspects is China. And the chief operating officer for a federal contractor, Keypoint Government Solutions, told lawmakers that it wasn't his company's fault, disputing an official account that hackers had used one of his employees' credentials in one of the break-ins. The Archuleta also acknowledged that a federal security system called Einstein that failed to prevent the millions of sensitive files on government employees from being improperly accessed has been plagued by delays and is largely unable to stop the most sophisticated attacks, but she pledged to make sure it gets fixed. Akhtar?
Well, it doesn't seem as if we're going to see the last of that, Leila. Thanks very much for joining us. We must leave it there.
My pleasure.